Welcome back. We are thrilled to be here. This is our 16th session. Thanks for joining us again.
Yes, here we go. So in our last session, we ended up with another very long letter to Sinnett. And in the last part of it, he got a little more personal information as far as just kind of chit-chatting. He said, your 2 letters to Stainton Moses will lead to no result whatsoever. And Sinnett had shared with him some of the things that K.H. had told him, Sinnett, about Stainton Moses, about his misunderstanding of who Imperator was at the current time.
And that most likely shut him down a little bit or created some
ego
tension.
His ego got out of whack. And so he's just warning him. He said, your good intentions are not going to turn out the way you think they are. A little friendly warning there. And then he said, do I laugh at you because you grope in the dark? And he said, of course not. And then he said, where did you get that idea that you wanted a copy of my portrait? I've only had one. It was a tintype that was made in my university days. And the nose is peeling off. One of the eyes is gone. The emulsion obviously had peeled off of the metal plate. And he said, I never make a promise but what I intend to keep it. So I won't promise anything, but I may try at some point. He's very accommodating. He really is.
Yeah.
We'll see just to what extent. And then the quotation from Tennyson, I really can't say where I learned that because it was a quote that wasn't in any of his books published at the time. And he said, I get random thoughts sometimes. I am out observing the world and I tune into something, and if it catches my fancy, I listen in for a while. He said, and I never forget something that I have once heard or seen. He said, it's a bad habit of mine.
Not a bad habit. I would like that habit.
And then he said, I hope these disjointed reflections and explanations may be pardoned in one who remained for over 9 days in his stirrups without dismounting. Yes, I am tired, and therefore will close. I thought about that afterwards and kind of meditated on it, and I have a possible explanation. K.H. doesn't always express things in Western terminology. He's an Asian from India, and they have a different way of looking at things. So it's very possible that he's separating days and nights. So when he said, I spent 9 days in the stirrups without dismounting, I think he meant he rode all day, every day for 9 days, and then rested at night. I'm just guessing that that might be an explanation because he has said before that he never tells a lie. So I take him at his word for that. So if there's something that seems out of place, I think there must be a logical explanation for it. All right. Now, this next letter was received in Shimla. Okay, let me set the stage a little bit here. The previous letter was written while Sinnett was on his way from Allahabad to Shimla for the founding of the Shimla Eclectic Society.
We might want to put a map.
I've thought about that. I won't promise, but maybe next time we'll try to get a map where we can point out the locations of some of these places. So Sinnett was almost to Shimla at the time of his last letter. And the founding of the Eclectic Society took place on August 21st, 1881. Now, remember, Sinnett had just a month earlier arrived back from London from his 3-month vacation. And he arrived in Bombay, traveled back to Allahabad, where his regular home was, but his wife and son weren't with him. They wouldn't arrive back until January, the following January. So he went up to Shimla for the founding of this society, and apparently Hume said, look, you normally come up here anyway this time of year. And he said, why don't you, instead of opening your Shimla house, come and stay with me? Since your wife and child are not there, you won't have to worry about servants. You won't have to worry about the household. You can just come. And Hume had a huge house. He had a mansion. So it was nothing at all to have an extra guest in the house for weeks, months. And so they actually lived together for several months, a few months. And so that's the setting. Why don't you go ahead and start letter number 21. At this point, he is in Shimla, living with Hume.
Autumn 1881. I foresaw that which now happens. In my Bombay letter, I advised you to be prudent as to what you allowed Stainton Moses to learn about Imperator and his own mediumship, suggesting that he should be told merely the substance of what I said. When watching you at Allahabad, I saw you making instead copious extracts for him from my letter. I again saw the danger, but did not interfere for several reasons. Isn't it interesting? He's Sinnett is being observed,
and kind of tested also.
And this would happen for any of us who are
yes, and we don't
probation.
know. We don't know about
Right.
it. So we should always operate as if we are being observed.
It's true. One of them is that I believe the time fully come when social and moral safety demands that someone of the Theosophical Society should speak the truth, though the Himalayas fall on him. The unveiling of the ugly truth has to be done with the greatest discretion and caution, though. And I see that many of you, yourself with the rest, breed but enemies by making too much of me and my personal opinions. On that side, the irritation is great, and you will soon find flashes of it in the banner of light and elsewhere, and you shall lose Stainton Moses.
So he already knows that.
He predicted
KH
that.
does.
Now, what is the banner of light?
That's the newspaper for the spiritualists.
That's right. Banner of light, yes.
So also interesting that he notes that there are times when we do not engage in controversy just because we don't want that energy being thrown back at us, for one thing. And there's no reason to stir things up unless it has a purpose. And he said in this case, it was important that they be told the truth. He said sometimes we have to say the truth, whether it's acceptable to the other person or not. And we have to just be willing to accept the consequences of that. And we can learn again from that. There are times when we have to be circumspect and not stir up trouble, but there are some times when you have to confront somebody about something.
The masters give us insight into how to do both of those very skillfully.
Yes, there's so much we can learn about how to act as a potential chela in the future. We have to prepare for it now. You can't learn everything after the fact.
They're giving us like examples of how to live, really.
Right.
And isn't it interesting too that both paths, the non-confrontational path and the confrontational, they both require vairagya. They both
Yes.
require non-attachment.
Yes.
Both in different ways.
Yes.
The copious extracts have done their work, for they were much too copious. No powers, whether human or superhuman, can ever open the eyes of Stainton Moses. It was useless to tear them open. On this side, it is still worse. The strongest basis of complaint against me is the fact that my statement implies A, a kind of challenge to Stainton Moses to prove Imperator a spirit, B, I am severely denounced by our friend for making out Imperator to be a liar. Now, I mean to be explanatory but not apologetic. I most certainly meant both. Only I meant it for you, who had asked me for the information, by no means for him.
So, yeah, then that's the other test, was whether or not Sinnett was circumspect enough to realize this is information that's going to set him off, and he's not going to accept it. Well, Sinnett didn't realize that and walked right into a trap. And they often let us do that, make mistakes, because hopefully we learn from those mistakes. Hopefully Sinnett learned a very good lesson from that.
He has not proved his case, nor did I expect he would, even if he thought he could, as the claim rests entirely upon his own personal assertion due to his unwavering faith in his own impressions. It would be easy for me to prove Imperator no disembodied spirit at all, if I had very good reasons for not doing so at present. I had worded my letter very carefully so that, while letting you have a glimpse of the truth, I showed you most clearly that I had no right to divulge the secret of a brother. Our enemies all write books. They are very fond of dictating inspirational gospels and so get caught by the glue of their own rhetoric. Rest assured that no intelligent, clever, and truthful medium needs inspiration from a disembodied spirit. Let's blast that out to the world right there.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah. We don't need channelers. We need people who comprehend what we are teaching and then say the same thing in their own words.
That is amazing that he says that. They are very fond of dictating inspirational gospels and so get caught by the glue of their own rhetoric. We see that everywhere in the spiritual world.
He points out, too, that if these teachings that were being received by different channelers were true, then they would all correspond. They would all reinforce each other, but they don't. They're all disparate. They're all on from a different point of view, and none of them agree on anything.
And they have their own kind of like organization and maybe followers that they say, okay, this
and their own agenda. The first thing to look at with any messenger is, how big is the ego of this person? Are they pretending to channel some high teacher because, they picked me to be their mouthpiece, so you really should pay attention to everything I say? Or do they let the message stand on its own without announcing, this is from the Lord Maitreya?
It's interesting. At some point, maybe we'll talk about Edgar Cayce. I didn't see a huge ego in him.
No, I didn't either. He's an interesting character.
Yeah. I'd like to read that last sentence one more time. Rest assured that no intelligent, clever, and truthful medium needs inspiration from a disembodied spirit. Truth will stand without inspiration from gods or spirits. Yes, and better still, will stand in spite of them all. Angels whispering generally but falsehoods and adding to the stock of superstition.
Yeah, superstition.
Now, I got to ask this. I don't want to take us off track, but how could this be turned around on this? How could someone use that?
Well, I'll tell you straight out. There are lots of superstitions among theosophists. And I don't intend to prove specific ones. Mm-hmm. It's up to each individual to look at everything. Mm-hmm. Just because it comes from a theosophical source does not mean that it is legitimate or worthwhile.
Thank you for saying that. And to our viewers, that goes for you and for this too. We will never say this is the truth, what we're offering, what we believe has value. Please, use your discretion. Right? We would
never hurts to emphasize that this is what we believe, what we have found to be useful. It may or may not be useful for you, and you're the only one who can decide. We don't pretend to be highly enlightened individuals at all. We're hopefully on the path and making way slowly, and anything that we have learned up to this point, we're more than willing to share with other people. But please examine everything. Decide whether it's useful in your life. And maybe it isn't useful today, but maybe it will be in the future.
Good point. It is in view of such little unpleasantness that I have to abstain from satisfying C.C. Massey. I will not avail myself of his authority nor fulfill his desire, and I refuse most decidedly to communicate his secret, as it is of a nature which stands in his way for the attainment of adeptship, but has nothing whatever to do with his private character. This information again was meant for you as an answer to your surprised query whether there could be any impediments for my communicating with him and guiding him to the light, but it was never intended for his ears. He may have a page or two in his life's history which he would rather see obliterated, but his loyal and faithful instincts will always give him precedence and place him far above many a man who remained chaste and virtuous only because he never knew what temptation was. I will abstain then, with your kind permission.
So, some of the chelas we find out in other instances have secrets in their lives that they don't want the masters to know. And there was one in particular, he happened to be the secretary of Hume, a young man who was somewhat clairvoyant, and they were watching him to see if he would be a potential candidate for what they were looking for. So he was tested, but he had some secrets, and he kept them very carefully compartmentalized in his brain.
He was able to do that, though.
Yeah. So because he was making that effort, his Morya was the one who was watching him and observing him. He did not pry into that. He said, well, if he wants to keep it a secret, I'm not going to impose myself on that. But he did bring it up to him later and said, you seem to have some information that you don't want us to know. And he did fail as a pupil. So if we want to offer ourselves as chelas, our life really ought to be an open book. There should be nothing that they can't observe. And they will ignore a lot of stuff. Remember how he said, which one was it? C.C. Massey, I think, that had half a dozen illegitimate brats.
Oh.
And that wasn't a huge impediment.
No. Well, look at HPV. She smokes, eats a lot of meat.
That's relatively innocuous in comparison to having a bunch of illegitimate brats.
That's true.
That wasn't what prevented him from becoming a chela. It was other moral characteristics that did.
You always say that if we're going to make progress, we have to be honest about what we've got. And the best analogy to our viewers, you've probably heard us say this before, but take that flashlight and shine it in all the corners of your brain, your mind, your astral body. Shine it and see what you're hiding is going to fester, and it will be an impediment, just like Morya. The universe won't use us as an instrument if we're harboring heaviness and tamasic weight that we need to. We shouldn't be embarrassed about it. The only way to fix it is to first see what it is, then you can work on fixing it.
And that is the key. As long as we refuse to acknowledge that there's anything wrong, you are not going to make progress. Yeah. It's that simple. And a lot of people, not only are they good at lying to other people, they lie to themselves. And that's more dangerous. The worst thing you can do, because then you refuse to acknowledge. This is what Hume was doing. He refused to acknowledge his weaknesses. That's not true. How dare you say that of me? If you have people in your life that act like that, it's a warning. It's like don't you dare say anything negative about me. That is, I take offense at, and they make your life miserable if you do. So that is a clue that they are hiding something and that they don't want to acknowledge it.
It's the opposite of clarity of vision. It's literally closing your eyes to what's there. The opposite of what we're trying to do. In
Acknowledge
our
your
path.
faults. Apologize when you're wrong. I know people who have never, in my relationship with them, never apologized for anything. And yet there were numerous times when they really should have. The Mahatmas are not like that. They will absolutely apologize. Alcott was like that. The Mahatma said, Alcott, no matter how bad of a mistake he makes, he will admit it, he will apologize, and then he will proceed to try to fix it.
It's a lightening.
Yes.
It really is. Let's continue. In the future, my very dear friend, we will have to limit ourselves entirely to philosophy and avoid family gossip. Skeletons and family closets are, at times, more dangerous to meddle with than even dirty turbans, my illustrious and dear friend.
Do you remember that? The incident where he...
Yes, he was asked to change or to wear something more presentable.
Right. And this is a huge problem with both Hume and Sinnett. They are so buttoned up and so proper and so English that anything that doesn't fit their norm of what is respectable, they disregard. And in doing so, they have shut themselves off from some very important opportunities.
That was relating to Damodar, though. That wasn't KH.
No, it wasn't Damodar. It was a different one.
Oh.
They remember they were trying to figure out a way to communicate, and he said, "Well, we've got this one,
Right.
chela, but he's not presentable for a drawing room." And when HPB very carefully asked him to change his clothes and his turban, which were filthy, he got offended and said, "You're asking me to pretend to be something that I'm not."
And let not your too sensitive heart be troubled, or your imagination leads you to suppose that one single word of what I have now said is meant to convey a reproach. We half-savage Asiatics judge a man by his motives, and yours were all that is sincere and good. But you have to remember that you are at a hard school and dealing now with a world entirely distinct from your own. Especially, have you to bear in mind that the slightest cause produced, however unconsciously, and with whatever motive, cannot be unmade, or its effects crossed in their progress by millions of gods, demons, and men combined.
And this is a problem with European wannabe chelas. They expect everything to conform to their Western ways of doing things. You can't talk about certain subjects in public with other people. You have to be very well-mannered. Well, they keep pointing out, we Asiatics don't accept those norms. That may be your way of life, but if we see something that needs fixing, that is out of whack, we're going to let you know, especially if you're wanting to be a chela of ours. So if you're offended by any suggestion that you need to change something in what you're doing, then we can't work with you.
Therefore, you must not think me too hypocritical when I say that all of you have been more or less imprudent, when not indiscreet, the latter word applying so far but to one of the members. Hence, you will see perhaps that the mistakes and blunders of H. Steele Alcott are of a lighter hue than they at first appear, since even Englishmen, for more intelligent and versed in the world's ways than he is, are as liable to err. For you have erred, individually and collectively, as will be made apparent in a very near future, and the management and success of the society will prove, as a result, far more difficult in your case, since none of you is as ready to admit that he has done so. nor are you as prepared as he is to follow any advice offered you.
Meaning Alcott.
Yeah. You may tell Massey what I now say of him and the reasons given. You may read this letter to Mr. Hume, though I would not advise it.
Now, it sounds almost like a test, whether or not he's going to... And remember, he's living at Hume's house.
Mm-hmm. But I would strongly urge upon you the necessity of a greater caution than ever. Notwithstanding the purity of motives, the Chohan might one day consider but the result, and these may threaten to become too disastrous for him to overlook. There should be a constant pressure brought to bear upon the members of the SES to keep their tongues and enthusiasm at bay. And yet there is an increasing concern in the public mind in regard to your society, and you may soon be called upon to define your position more clearly. Very soon I will have to leave you to yourselves for the period of 3 months. Oh, wow. Whether it will begin in October or January will depend on the impulse given to the society and its progress.
All right, so
Wow.
This is the first time that he is saying that he is going to have to step back for a period of 3 months. And apparently, because I think HPB was actually staying with them too at this time, I believe. Mm-hmm. He apparently went to her and said, "What is this?" And she said, KH is going to be on a retreat for a period of 3 months, and beyond that, I can't reveal anything more.
I would feel personally obliged to you were you to kindly consent to examine a poem written by Padshah and given your opinion on its merits. I am anxious that the journal should be more successful this year than it has heretofore been.
And I think by that he means the Theosophist magazine.
The journal? Okay. My dear friend, you must not feel surprised if I tell you that I really feel weary and disheartened at the prospect I have before me. I'm afraid you never will have the patience to wait for the day when I am permitted to satisfy you. Ages ago, our people began to make certain rules according to which they intended to live. All these rules have now become law. Our predecessors had to learn everything they know by themselves. Only the foundation was laid for them. We offered to lay for you such a foundation, but you will accept nothing short of the complete edifice, ready for you to take possession of. Do not accuse me of indifference or neglect when not receiving for days any reply from me. Very often I have nothing to say, for you ask questions which I have no right to answer. Wow. But I must conclude here, as my time is limited and I have some other work to do. Yours sincerely, K.H.
Now, hold that thought right there. At this point, K.H. has been corresponding strictly with Sinnett, because remember a few months earlier, Hume got in a huff and said, well, if you guys aren't going to reveal what we want you to reveal, then I'm not sure you can count on my support. Mm-hmm. But then in the meantime, he had actually been helping HPB by writing some articles for the Theosophist magazine. And she was corresponding with him, and he was actually receptive to a lot of this material that she was furnishing him. So he would write articles that would be published in the Theosophist magazine, and he was actually doing some good work in that regard.
This is Hume.
This is Mr. Hume. Mm-hmm. And now the two of them are together again, Hume and Sinnett. So they can't really communicate too much with Sinnett without Hume being aware of what's going on, because obviously they're going to discuss it. They're living in the same house. But KH at this point has much more regard for Sinnett than he does for Hume. But they also appreciate the amount of work that Hume is doing to help HPB. So they're just kind of tentative with Hume, but KH is all on board as far as Sinnett is concerned right now.
He says, "Don't accuse me of indifference or neglect when not receiving for days any reply from me." That must mean that Sinnett is sending more letters than we're aware of.
Of course, we don't know. We never know what questions. Later we'll get one example where we actually get the questions back. But in most cases, we have no idea, except when KH puts something in quotes. And then what was the PS?
The brandy atmosphere in the house is dreadful.
So in Hume's house, they eat large dinners at night with cigars and brandy afterwards, and are not exactly living the life of a renunciant. In our previous session, KH mentioned the book of Kiu-te and said that HPB knew it by heart and could recite long passages of it. I failed to mention that that book or collection of writings was not in Sanskrit or any other language that was commonly in use. It was in the secret of the in the language of the adepts, the secret language of the adepts, which is Senzar. Yeah. And obviously HPB knows Senzar, but no one in the outside world does. It's very hidden, very occult. So there were a couple, it's a married couple, David Regal and Nancy Regal, took it upon themselves to do research into these books of Kiu-te, and they actually discovered some Tibetan manuscripts that refer to those books and published some of the teachings from them, apparently.
Do we know if Senzar had a written variant? Was there a
I have no idea. I assume it does, but it may not. It may be entirely on other realms of existence besides the physical, and that may be how they keep it secret. But it is apparently how all of the higher adepts communicate among themselves, even their chelas, because HPB wasn't an adept at the time. But this book, if anyone is interested in it, is called Blavatsky's Secret Books. And it's available from the Wizard's Bookshelf in San Diego. This was published in 1999. So I haven't delved into it very much, but if anyone is interested, that is one source that you can use. Now, let's go ahead with letter number 22.
Letter number 22. Received in Shimla, autumn 1881. I am painfully aware of the fact that the habitual incoherence of her statements, especially when excited, and her strange ways make her, in your opinion, a very undesirable transmitter of our messages. Now, we don't know who he's talking about, but we assume it's HPB.
It's HPB,
Yes.
Of course.
Nevertheless, kind brothers, once you have learned the truth that this unbalanced mind, the seeming incongruity of her speeches and ideas, her nervous excitement, all that in short, which is so calculated to upset the feelings of sober-minded people, whose notions of reserve and manners are shocked by such strange outbursts of what they regard as her temper, and which so revolt you, once you know that nothing of it is due to any fault of hers, you may, perchance, be led to regard her in quite a different light. That was the longest sentence of all time. Although the time is not quite ripe to let you entirely into the secret, and although you are not yet prepared to understand the great mystery, even if I did tell you, owing to the great injustice and wrong that has been done, I am empowered to allow you a glimpse behind the veil. What is he talking about? The great injustice and wrong that has been done?
Because Hume especially would get very upset every time HPB exploded. So he did exactly the same thing.
And why is she exploding specifically for different things?
Because Hume likes to poke people.
Okay.
He's always pushing buttons, trying to get and it wasn't difficult to get a response from her. One thing that you will find out is that people who are being helped by these Mahatmas, they are trying to speed up their progress. And the only way to do that is through this Shaktipat sort of thing, which raises the vibrational rate of that person.
It causes a little bit of strain.
It's a lot of strain. And it's not dissimilar to somebody sticking their finger in a light socket. It's like, yeah, so you will find some of these people that are being worked on and who are making a real effort to raise their consciousness, that they are extremely nervous, highstrung, we would call them. So, yeah, they are easily set off. And Hume, of course, being Hume, we'll find out. And then it would, of course, pretend that he hadn't done anything wrong.
This state of hers is intimately connected with her occult training in Tibet, just what you said, and is due to her being sent out alone into the world to gradually prepare the way for others. Any pioneer is going to have it tough, it tougher than those who follow. After nearly a century of fruitless search, our chiefs had to avail themselves of the only opportunity to send out a European body upon European soil to serve as a connecting link between your land and our own. You do not understand? Of course not. Please then remember what she tried to explain and what you gathered fairly well from her, namely the fact of the 7 principles in the complete human being. Now, no man or woman, unless he be an initiate of the 5th circle, can leave the precincts of the Bodh-las and return back into the world in his integral whole, if I may use the expression.
Okay, Bodh-las is the abode of the enlightened ones. In other words, where the adepts hang out with each other. So that's an enclave of individuals who are highly enlightened and who are working with chelas, who may also be there physically present, to be taught. And that's what he's referring to as Bodh-las. But for any one of those to leave there, whether it's a chela or one of the adepts, and go back out into the world, there are 2 things that have to be done, and we'll see what that is.
1, at least of his 7 satellites, has to remain behind for 2 reasons. The first, to form the necessary connecting link, the wire of transmission. The second, as the safest guarantee that certain things will never be divulged. She is no exception to the rule. And you have seen another example, a highly intellectual man who had to leave one of his skins behind and thus is considered highly eccentric.
Now, we don't know who, or at least I don't know who that is. So it's someone that Sinnett has met or knows of, but they don't reveal who that is.
The bearing and status of the remaining 6 depend upon the inherent qualities, the psychophysiological peculiarities of the person, especially upon the idiosyncrasies transmitted by what modern science calls atavism.
Now, what is atavism?
I don't know.
In physiology, it's a throwback to something from an earlier point in evolution. So, for example, people who have extra nipples, and it could be male or female, or a tailbone, the coccyx, may actually look like a miniature tail.
Wow.
So things that have been eliminated along the way, but then all of a sudden it just pops up again. That's what atavism is.
Are there examples of that modern science recognizes? And
Well, they're the ones who came up with the term.
wow. Acting in accordance with my wishes, my brother M made to you through her a certain offer. If you remember, you had but to accept it, and at any time you liked, you would have had for an hour or more the real Beituali to converse with, instead of the psychological cripple you generally have to deal with now. Oh my goodness. Yesterday, it was his mistake, M's mistake.
Yeah, so Morya apparently had offered to Sinnett and Hume, since you don't recognize her limitations, that we may be willing to let you see the entire real HPB for an hour or so and converse with that individual. And then hopefully you would get an insight into who she really is, not this cripple that she is now because of the missing elements in her constitution. But they messed that up because they got her all upset, and so that wasn't a possibility. And it was their own fault because Hume especially caused trouble. And so the thing that had been offered was no longer possible, and they missed out on an enormous possible experience.
What would Sinnett have been able to gain, and what is her totality, meaning her higher self?
Her real, yes, her real personality that she would have when she was in Tibet with the masters. She was not the same individual when she was living and working with them as she was in the outer world. And Sinnett and Hume just could not wrap their heads around that.
Interesting. He ought not to have sent her to deliver the message to Mr. Sinnett in the state she was in, but to hold her responsible for her purely physiological excitement and to let her see your contemptuous smiles was positively sinful.
So when she got all upset, the two Englishmen kind of thought, okay.
Pardon me, my brothers and good sirs, my plain talk. I act but in accord with what was asked of me by yourself in your letter. I took the trouble to ascertain the spirit and meaning with which everything in Mr. Sinnett's room was said and done.
Okay, so apparently Sinnett had said, okay, we've got a situation here. Would you be willing to look in to the Akashic records to see what actually took place and see were we out of place?
And though I have no right to condemn you, since you are ignorant of the true state of things, I cannot but strongly disapprove of that which, however much it might have seemed polished outwardly under ordinary circumstances, was still cruelty. Bus.
All right, so he's just telling them straight out. You may have thought that you were using proper language and yet you were smirking at the same time. And he said, regardless of your outward appearance, it was cruelty. Straight out. Bus is a term they use, and I'm not sure where it comes from, but it means enough. Cut that off. It's kind of like basta in Italian. Basta. All right, letter 23.
All right. October 1881. PPC. What is it? Post?
It is pour prendre congé. So, apparently it was something that guests at someone's house would write, like if they had been staying for a long time, and they would write a thank you note, not just orally express thanks, but they would actually write a note of leaving before they continued their journey or went back home. And they would put PPC on this, meaning this is my parting letter or communication with you.
My dear friend, your note received. What you say in it shows me that you entertain some fears lest I should have been offended by Mr. Hume's remarks. Be at ease, pray, for I never could be. It is not anything contained in his observations that annoyed me, but the persistence with which he was following out a line of argument that I knew was pregnant with future mischief. These ad hominem attacks, renewed and taken up from where we had left it off last year, were intended to force the Chohan into some very desirable concessions.
Aha, so there's a reason for all these attacks that Hume is making, and for all of these ad hominem attacks, which are, again, specious arguments. They're not valid and they're not genuine, but they look good on the surface. And so he's trying to assert his powerful intellect to force the Chohan to accede to his wishes. Yeah.
We don't know a name for the Chohan, right? We don't know who that. It's one of the chiefs.
The Maha Chohan. The big. Well, Chohan means Lord. Maha means the Lord of all of them.
I dreaded the consequences, and my concerns had a very good foundation. Please assure Mr. Hume of my personal sympathy and respect for him, and give him my most friendly regards. But I will not have the pleasure of catching up any more of his letters or answering them for the next 3 months. As nothing whatever of the Society's original program is yet agreed to, nor do I expect to see it agreed to for some time to come. I have to give up my projected journey to Bhutan, and my brother M is to take my place. So now we're gonna, okay, this is...
Yeah, now, in the previous session, we heard at the end of his letter that KH was planning to go to Bhutan. What he didn't say at the time was that it was with regard to the Theosophical Society, and specifically the Eclectic Society. So he was going for whatever reason that would help the society. But he said, based on what's going on, and more importantly, what is not happening, there's no reason for me to make that trip.
Mm-hmm. We are at the end of September, and nothing could be done by October 1st that might warrant upon my insisting to go thither. My chiefs desire me particularly to be present at our New Year's festivals, February next, and in order to be prepared for it, I have to avail myself of 3 intervening months.
All right, so this retreat that he's going on lasts for 3 months. And apparently, KH is also the master of ceremonies for the lamas, for many different ceremonies, but the New Year ceremonies are especially important in Tibetan Buddhism. So they wanted him specifically to be there for the Tibetan New Year, which varies, but in 1882 was going to be in February. So since he had to be back by that time, he had to leave now.
I will therefore now bid you goodbye, my good friend, thanking you warmly for all you have done and tried to do for me. Next January next, I hope to be able to let you have news from me, and, barring new difficulties in the way of the Society, you will find me in precisely the same disposition and frame of mind in which I now part with both of you. Whether I will succeed in bringing my beloved but very obstinate brother M to my way of thinking is what I am now unable to say.
So he had asked Morya, would you handle these 2 guys while I'm gone for me? And Morya was still kind of hesitant. He wasn't committed just yet.
Now, KH could be corresponding from wherever he goes, but he's probably doing different work, which will take his attention.
We will see.
Oh, okay.
It's quite interesting.
Oh, okay, good. I have tried and will try once more, but I am really afraid that Mr. Hume and he would never agree with each other. He told me he would answer your letter and request through a third party, not Madame Blavatsky. Meanwhile, she knows quite enough to furnish Mr. Hume with 10 lectures if you only have the desire to deliver them, and he recognized that instead of entertaining such a poor opinion of her in one direction and such a very erroneous conception in some others. M promised me to refresh her failing memory and to revive all she has learned with him in as bright a way as could be desired.
So this is interesting. HPB has been taught an enormous amount of information in the past 20 plus years, but all of us forget stuff. I have to constantly refresh my memory of things. Go back and reread the same books that I've read 4 times before in my life. But each time I'll learn something new, and it re-solidifies what I learned before. So she needed the same thing. She needed a refresher course to bring her back up to date. And M had been working on that.
Should the arrangement fail to get Mr. Hume's approval, I will have but to sincerely regret it, for it is the best I can think of. I leave orders with my disinherited to watch over all as much as it lies in his weak powers.
Who's the disinherited?
DK.
Yes.
Why are his powers weak? Just because he's younger and newer? Or?
He's not yet a full adept. So he's his most advanced chela, I believe. And yet he still has things to learn.
Jwal Kul, DK.
Jwal Kul.
And now I must close. I have but a few hours before me to prepare for my long, very long journey. Hoping we part as good of friends as ever, and that we might meet as better ones still. Let me now, astrally, shake hands with you, and assure you of my good feelings once more. Yours as ever, K.H. Wow, that's cool. He's very kind and compassionate, very caring.
Yes, he, no matter how much these two guys mess up, especially Hume, he's very compassionate, very willing to move on and work with them as much as he can, because he recognizes that there aren't any other better candidates coming along. So let's see if we can't work with these two and make something of it.
So I wonder if he was able to astrally shake hands with Sinnett's awareness.
Oh, I don't think so. I think it was a figure of speech.
Sure. Letter number 24, October 1881. Now this is for Morya.
Yes, our first letter from Mahatma Morya.
And he's not the direct report of KH, but they're more or less parallel.
He is older physically and probably knows certain things that KH doesn't know. He kind of refers, he looks at KH as his younger brother, and you'll see the relationship that they have. They're like this.
And Morya he's been an adept longer.
Yes.
You think? Okay.
Oh, one thing I meant to point out. Remember when KH had his portrait taken? I put 2 and 2 together, I think. The invention of the ferrotype took place in 1853. 2 years prior to that was when Morya was physically in London, and that's when he met HPB. I suspect that Morya took KH with him to Europe in 1851, and that was when KH began his university studies. Just a guess, but the timing of Morya being in Europe and KH being in Europe suggests that to me.
And that might be how somebody happened to get an enrollment roster from the university around that year.
Yeah.
To see if he was enrolled. Okay, from Mahatma Morya. Very kind Sinnett Sahib.
Sahib. Sahib is an Arabic word, and it means friend or companion. It's a term of endearment.
Okay. Many thanks and salams. Why is he using so many Arabic words?
I don't know.
Many thanks and salams for the tobacco machine.
Okay, the tobacco machine. KH smokes. Not KH, Morya. Morya smokes. And apparently he uses a hookah. And they weren't always the big machines that we see today. Sometimes they were just a handheld device. But in some of HPB's writings, she mentions something about one time when she went back to visit Morya and KH, that in the place where they were living, that the gul, gul, gul of his hookah was very reassuring for her.
The what?
She was imitating the sound of a hookah when you're smoking
so
it.
Funny. Okay.
The water bubbles, I guess.
Our Frenchified and Pelengized pundit.
All right. Of course, KH, he always makes fun of him as being Frenchified and Europeanized. Pelengized, Peleng is a Tibetan word that means foreigner. So he's making fun of the fact that this this brother of mine has become more European.
Our Frenchified, Pelengized pundit tells me the little short thing has to be culoted. Whatever he may mean by this, and so I will proceed to do so. The pipe is short and my nose is long, so we will agree very well together, I hope. Thanks, many thanks. Okay.
So I think here, because there is no such word as culoted, I think he's trying to use a French word, which is collate, which means to stick something onto something else. And I think he's trying to use that French term, couler, and kind of making a mess of it.
That's interesting. Okay. The situation.
Yeah, his personality. We're going to see. He's not quite as stern and unapproachable as KH makes him out to be.
The situation is more serious than you may imagine, and we will want our best forces and hands to work at pushing away bad luck. But our Chohan willing, and you helping, we will scramble out somehow or another. There are clouds which are below your horizon, and KH is right. The storm is threatening. Could you but go to Bombay to the anniversary, you would confer upon KH and myself a great obligation and a lasting one. But that you know best.
All right, so this is October 1881, and the TS was founded when?
1875.
In November 17th, in fact. So we're 1 month away from the 6th anniversary of the founding. And so they're going to have a special convention ceremony.
Anniversary in Bombay.
In Bombay for the 6th anniversary. And he's saying, you would do me a favor and certainly your friend KH if you would attend that.
This meeting will be either the triumph or the downfall of the society and a gulf. You are wrong, too, about the Pelling Sahib. He is as dangerous as a friend as an enemy.
And he's referring to Hume.
Wow. Very, very bad as both. I know him best. Anyhow, you, Sinnett Sahib, reconciled me to a good many things. You are true, and true I will be. Yours always, M. Letter number 25.
Now, you notice these letters aren't 20 pages long.
Yeah. Now, this is still October 1881 from M again. Mr. Sinnett, you will receive a long letter posted Sunday at Bombay from the Brahmin boy.
Now, this is Damodar. He's the Brahmin boy.
Okay.
But he's going to warn him about something.
Okay. Kuthumi went to see him, as he is his chela, before going into Tong, pa-gni, the state in which he now is. And left with him certain orders.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. The boy has a little bungled up the message, so be very careful before you show it to Mr. Hume, lest he should again misunderstand my brother's real meaning. I will not stand any more nonsense or bad feeling against him, but retire at once. We do the best we can.
So he is very much more direct than KH is. He just states it like it is.
I like that. Now, letter number 26, that's from Morya again, so we don't have Damodar's letter yet.
No, I'm not sure that letter is available. I don't remember ever seeing it.
That'd be nice to see a letter from Damodar.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'll look and see if there's anything.
Okay. Letter number 26, still October 1881. My dear young friend, I am sorry to differ from you in your last 2 points. If he can stand one sentence of rebuke, he will stand far more than what you would have me alter.
And he's, again, talking about Hume, the difficult one.
Yeah. Here's a French word. O tu o rien.
Ou tu ou rien.
There we go.
Either all or nothing.
Ou tu ou rien. As my Frenchified KH taught me to say. I have thought your suggestion number 1 good and have fully adopted it, hoping that you will not refuse some day to give me lessons of English. I had Benjamin stick a patch in the page and made him forge my calligraphy while I was smoking a pipe on my back.
So he's got a sense of humor.
Goofy, like lying on his back smoking a pipe. And
I mean, you could get the visual.
Yeah.
And Benjamin, again, is DK.
Oh.
It's another term they call him.
Why Benjamin?
From the Bible.
Oh, that's funny.
Benjamin was, I think, also disinherited by his family.
Oh, wow. Okay. Not having the right to follow KH, I feel very lonely without my boy.
That's interesting. Not having the right to follow him, I feel very lonely without my boy.
Gosh. Hoping to be excused for writing and refusal, I trust you will not shrink from telling the truth if need be, even in the face of the son of a member of parliament. You have too many eyes watching you to afford making mistakes now. M.
All right, the son of a member of parliament is Hume. Remember, his father was a member of parliament, and he was quite wealthy, as we found out. And obviously, Hume inherited some or most of that wealth, so he also was quite wealthy.
Letter number 27, October 1881. Your letter received. I believe you had better try and see whether you could not make your ideas less polemical and dry than his. I begin to think there may be some stuff in you, since you are able to appreciate my beloved friend and brother so well. I have attended to the Brahmin boy's letter and erased the offensive sentence, replacing it with another. You can now show it to the Maha Sahib, him so proud in his bak humility and so humble in his pride.
Bak means chatty, wordy, and so humble in his pride. You know, the saying, I'm very humble and proud of it. And that's Hume. He's very humble and very proud of it.
As for phenomena, you will have none. I have written through Alcott. Blessed is he who knows our Kuthumi, and blessed is he who appreciates him. What I now mean, you will understand someday. As for your AOH, Alan O. Hume, I know him better than you ever will. M.
Yeah, so whoever thought that HPB wrote all of these letters is not very observant.
What we didn't address is the state of consciousness that KH
Oh, we
is
will.
in.
Don't you worry.
Tong, pa-gni.
Yes.
Okay. Letter number 28. If you are so anxious to find the particular spot where I erased a sentence and precipitated another instead last night at the post office, I can satisfy your curiosity, Mr. Sinnett. But that it was the Chohan's knowledge that neither you nor anyone else cared for the real object of the society, nor had any respect for the brotherhood, but only a personal feeling for a few of the brothers. So you cared only for K.H. personally and phenomena, Mr. Hume, to get at the secrets of their philosophy and to assure himself that the Tibetan Mahatmas, the Las, if existed at all outside of Madame Blavatsky's imagination, were connected in any way with certain adepts he had in his mind. Wow. All this is what K.H. said, what I had to write and precipitate instead of that which stood then written by the boy in a phraseology which would have called out from Mr. Hume a whole torrent of fine words and the word ignorance applied to my brother. A whole torrent of fine words, I'm sure, is being kind. I would not have even the desert wind listen to a word said at low breath against him who now sleeps. Such is the cause of the tamacha produced by me and for no other cause. Yours, M.
KH has used this word before. Morya spells it a little differently, but tamasha is a big production. So he, to accommodate KH, changed something that Damodar had written because he had bungled the message. And so he went to great lengths to try not to upset Hume, and it didn't work anyway. So all for nothing, basically. Yeah, so what is it he said? I would not have even the desert wind listen to a word said at low breath against him who now sleeps. So what the heck is this condition? What was it called? Tong pa-gni. Tong pa-gni. We're going to find out a little bit more about it as we go along in the next letter. But I don't think we have enough time to get very deep into that today. So we'll save most of that for next time. But there are a couple of other things that I wanted to point out. Okay, the first of those is from Virginia Hansen's book, Masters in Men, where she's talking about the founding of the society on August 21st. She says here that this took place on August 21st. A.O. Hume was elected president, Mr. Hume vice president, and Ross Scott secretary. The stated objects were only two. First, to support and countenance the theosophical movement by demonstrating to the native community that many Europeans respect, sympathize, and are desirous of promoting it. Second, to obtain through the assistance of the Adept brothers of the first section of the parent society a knowledge of the psychological truths which they have experimentally ascertained, and thus acquire a means of successfully combating the materialism of the present age. The society shall only admit as members persons already fellows of the Theosophical Society. Did you notice anything? Not one word about brotherhood. So, even after all of the preaching and reminding, they still chose not to even include that as one of their objects for this new society. No mention whatsoever of brotherhood.
This was the eclectic.
This is branch. The eclectic
okay, the
society.
Let's make that clear. Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, it gives you a little bit of insight into And Hume, remember, as K.H. pointed it out, was using all of his debating skills to try to get the upper hand over the Mahachohan. He was trying to force him into conceding, okay, we'll show you guys what you want to know. This is another book, The Letters of H.P. Blavatsky to A.P. Sinnett. And this was published at the same time, or approximately the same time, as the Mahatma Letters were published. Remember, Sinnett gave all of his letters, both the Mahatma Letters and other letters that he had received from HPB and other writers, to this Mr. Barker. And he kept them and published them a couple of years after Sinnett died. So in the introduction to this book, he says, let me find the place here. The letters here presented to the reader, written by the founder of the Theosophical Society between the years 1880 and 1888, are intended to form a companion volume to the recently published Mahatma Letters and should be read in conjunction with that work. So, and in fact, this does go hand in hand with the Mahatma Letters. This is how those of us who study the Mahatma Letters can correlate other events that were happening within the society, this and other records. So if you're a serious student, you definitely need a copy of this book. Now, one other thing that I wanted to point out is another book that my friend in Estonia is teaching, or teaching a study course in right now, The Key to Theosophy. I had forgotten about this book until he brought it again to my attention. He asked a question about it and couldn't answer it right away because there was something I was missing, so I had to read the whole section to sort it out. But I forgot how good this book is. This was published in 1889, so a year after The Secret Doctrine was published. This is one of the last books that HPB wrote. Her first book was written or published in 1877, Isis Unveiled, but it had a lot of problems. Even The Secret Doctrine is very hard to understand. So this actually is an easy book to understand. If you want to know more about how she perceived Theosophy toward the end of her life, after she's been reminded by Morya and brought up to date on things, and after writing The Secret Doctrine, she also wrote this book, which is in the form of an inquirer asking her about Theosophy. So I wanted to read just a couple of little things here. She said, "To the mentally lazy or obtuse, Theosophy must remain a riddle. For in the world mental as in the world spiritual, each man must progress by his own efforts. The writer cannot do the reader's thinking for him, nor would the latter be any the better off if such vicarious thought were possible." We pointed out many times, you cannot just transmit something to somebody else. They have to put forth the effort to comprehend it, to meditate on it, to contemplate it, apply it in their everyday lives, and then they might know something about it. Just because you've heard of something doesn't mean you know it. What I try to teach something to somebody, they say, oh, I already know all about that. I could almost guarantee they don't. They've heard about it, but I don't see any indication that it appears in their life. So my guess is maybe they don't know it. So there is no magic involved in that. You have to put forth the effort. All right, here she's talking about a potential chela. She says he has to live a life of abstinence in everything, of self-denial and strict morality, doing his duty by all men. This does not imply that outside of the TS and the inner circle there are no theosophists, for there are, and more than people know of. So she had her inner circle toward the end of her life when she was living in London, and she was teaching them personally. And that is what she's referring to. And the Inquirer says, but why could not a man of well-balanced mind and singleness of purpose, one say of indomitable energy and perseverance, become an occultist, and even an adept if he works alone? And she says he may, but there are 10,000 chances against one that he will fail. No books on occultism or theurgy exist in our day which give out the secrets of alchemy or medieval theosophy in plain language. All are symbolical or in parables. And as the key to these has been lost for ages in the West, how can a man learn the correct meaning of what he is reading and studying? The Inquirer says, are we to understand that the inner group of the TS claims to learn what it does from real initiates or masters of esoteric wisdom? She says, not directly. The personal presence of such masters is not required. Suffice it if they give instructions to some of those who have studied under their guidance for years and devoted their whole lives to their service. Then, in turn, these can give out the knowledge so imparted to others who had no such opportunity. A portion of the true science is better than a mass of undigested and misunderstood learning. An ounce of gold is worth a ton of dust. But how can one know whether the ounce is real gold or only a counterfeit? She says a tree is known by its fruit, a system by its results. When our opponents are able to prove to us that any solitary student of occultism throughout the ages has become a saintly adept or achieved feats such as are claimed to have been done by Saint Germain without any master to guide him, and all this without being a medium, a self-deluded psychic, or a charlatan, then shall we confess ourselves mistaken. She goes on to point out that it's almost impossible to gain all of this information and understanding of the information without the intervention of the adepts, or at least their direct pupils. She was the direct contact at that time. So if anyone belongs to an esoteric society of any type today, observe who is in that. The ones who are doing the teaching. Are they simply regurgitating things that were written by Blavatsky and perhaps other people who were enlightened, who were working with masters? Or are they pretending to be something that they are not? Because if it is a living esoteric society, it has to have someone currently who is at least a chela in contact with these adepts. Otherwise, the information they are giving you is not really that worthwhile. So without the discernment, you will not be able to tell whether or not that is the case. Again, discernment is the key, the very first qualification we have to develop. So,
choose wisely, in other words. Choose your teacher, your chela, your educational environment wisely.
And so if you can't find one of these chelas in the outer world who is willing to work with you directly, then at least go back to the ones that we do know, HPB. That's the safest way to make sure that you don't get off in the weeds somehow. And
another excellent source is Patanjali and the Yoga Sutras.
Yes, absolutely. Stick with the sources. Mm-hmm. And as we pointed out in our last session, please don't get into all of this desire for psychic development and clairvoyance and work on the astral plane. That will not help you at all. All right, well, we're going to actually get a much longer letter from Mahatma M next time. He's going to kind of go into KH's style.
I want to say one more thing about this topic that you mentioned. Just one more thing. Many of our viewers know that I'm deep into the world of yoga, and in modern yoga, there are traditions and lineages still, even though they aren't front and center in the yoga world. In the yoga world, mostly it's you go to a studio and it's more of a fitness type of yoga class, and there's a teacher who teaches the class. And yes, there may be a situation where that teacher offers yoga philosophy and specific teachings as well. But if you do choose a lineage to initiate into or resign yourself or offer yourself as a student of a particular teacher or lineage, I want to just reiterate what Terry said. Use your discernment. A lot of us, a lot of people in the yoga world, a lot of people in the spiritual world love to be part of a group that they feel belonging to and they think they belong to and they resonate with. But what I see, what I see is that usually it's the first situation you come across that has a sort of understandable situation that there are some nice people and you're like, ooh, this is, and then I see people dive right in and just resign themselves to that and turn off their periphery to anything else. It is good to dedicate yourself. It is good to have willpower and to strive with a practice towards deepening your practice. At the same time, don't just dive into the first spiritual lineage that you stumble across or that a friend invites you to, therefore cutting off the possibility for something else that might be even more resonant with you. So be discerning, don't close yourself off to other possibilities, and when you do dedicate yourself to something, make sure it's as real as you believe it can be.
Always look at the person who is doing the teaching. Ask yourself, does this individual indicate in his or her life a higher level of comportment, of understanding? Is that someone that I really, truly want to emulate and be just like this person? If it is, then continue working with them. If it's not, if they are just kind of a mediocre individual who has collected a bunch of pupils around them, you may want to rethink your dedication to that operation, that organization. All right, I think that's plenty of material for this time. Next time it gets even more exciting, if possible, but it does. We're going to find out more about KH's state at that time, his 3-month retreat. All right.